Hello everyone, my name is Dylan Matthew Sutopo and welcome to the basics of 3D modeling and animation. This is part of my personal project. This is a video and I'll be narrating my process throughout the video. And so let's start with a tour of the scene. So this is the animation. It's just a tour around what I modeled, what I made with the Blender, which is the completely free and open source program I use to animate all of this and model all of this, and texture everything too. So yeah, this is an overall tour of the scene, and this is my character Jim. So let's get into the dissection of the scene. So let's start with this guy. So this is my main model. I call him Jim just because it's a very simple name. And as you can see, this is his side view, his back view, just a simple pose. And this is the rigging. So what rigging is basically making the endoskeleton for the models. So I made an endoskeleton for him, and so that it allows me to move his limbs around, move his head, his neck, his feet, everything like that. And right here, he's blue and sometimes like a bit red, like right now, just because it's called weight painting. So for every object there's always weight, right? And for this model I had to weight paint some stuff so that I can freely move his limbs without carrying the weight of other limbs and stretching and deforming the mesh. So these are the faces I made in a program called Pages, and for the Mac it's basically Microsoft Word. Simple enough. And right now you see the process of making Jim, making the main model. This is like the very end of the process. I'm just adjusting the sizes of his neck, his head, and everything, And I actually made two models. So that model was with his arms fully stretched out, and this is with his hands down. So those are two different models I'm gonna use to animate. And right now let's move on to the bookshelf. So other than Jim, the first thing I modeled was the bookshelf and to put in the room. So I started with a cube and just went on from there. So this is the right side of your screen right now is the material node, and basically what it does is it determines every texture of in the object. So for these books on the bookshelf, I'm texturing it through the material node. I'm deciding what color it uses, how glossy it is, how matte it is, how much it absorbs light, how much it reflects light. And now what you see is the room. So it's basically just a cube with a dissolved face, with one dissolved face. So yeah, that's how I started with the room. And as you can see, there's some light in the middle. That's that little circle before in the middle. And yeah. So let's move on to the kitchen. It's a very simple kitchen. There's some cupboards, a fridge, a sink, small plate, and a stove. So right now you see me making the stove. Fairly simple. I just took a rectangle, made some cuts on it, and used proportional editing to make the curves. So for almost every object, what I used is some reference images. So for the kitchen, I decided to go on this particular image, so that I know what I want to do and how it should look, And right now I'm making the sink, and as you can see, it's pretty difficult to make some curves in Blender, because all you have to do is extrude the shape and then deform it, extrude, deform. It's just really hard, because we're not given an option to just curve it right away. So yeah, and before you saw the reference image, which is the thing I used to know how to model this. And now I'm making the lighting in the kitchen, in the bottom of the cupboard. So what I did is just make some loop cuts on the bottom of the cupboard, and I just highlight it all and put some texture on it. Using the emission shader, I was able to achieve some lighting. Again, I use the material node. As you can see right now, you can see emission, you can see diffuse. So how an object looks, its texture is all dependent on shaders. And for this one, I use the diffuse shader, which is what everyone uses, because that gives the object some color and also emission, so that emits light. Right now, let's move on to the computer. It's just fairly simple: a desk, an office chair, a monitor, keyboard, and a magic trackpad based on Apple's magic trackpad, and then also a lamp and a door to the left. So this was fairly simple. I started with a plane, just a simple plane that it's already preset on Blender, and then I just subdivided the edges, the face, the bottom face, as you can see. So there's a lot of cuts. I scaled it down, extrude up from there, and kept on going. For this one, I had no reference image because I was actually using a monitor, obviously, to model all this. So I was able to go on my own monitor, and that's supposed to be a fish tank. But since I didn't want to model any fish, all I did was just put a glow-in-the-dark castle and some sand on it. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so for this one, the keyboard was pretty hard to make, even though it's I just started with a plane. I scaled it up so it looks like a kind of like a rectangle, a very thin rectangle. I made some cuts in the top of the face, and then just kept on extruding up and scaling the top face down, so that it actually looks like keyboard keys. And now, as you can see on my right, the right hand of the screen, I'm using the UV image editor, which is used to edit and transform the image textures. So if you want some textures as images, as textures, I'm sorry, you have to use the UV image editor. So you know how to you want the image to look. Okay, so it's how the image will look as a texture. Okay, so now let's move on to the couch, the carpet, the table, the phone, and the lamp. So this was fairly simple. I mean, everything's simple as long as you get used to Blender. You used to the keyboard shortcuts, to the modeling, how it works, and basically you always need to know how you want the object to look. So for the vase, I started with a simple circle, added a face on that, just kept extruding and then scaling, extrude and scale. That's how you see the curves. So I scaled it down for the thin and narrow part of the vase, the lamp, and then I just kept extruding and scaling up so that it becomes bigger, so it looks like an actual curve. Alright, and then you should see it after this. And then I also made the phone. So the phone is basically based on, I didn't mention this yet, but it's based on the Simpsons telephone that's usually sitting on their table every time they have an intro. So basically what I did was just take a cube, use the edge tool. So there's usually a vertice tool, an edge tool, and a face tool. I usually use the face tool because it's so easy to just use the face, select the face and deform from that, and make the object from that. But sometimes you need the edge tool to deform and make an object like how you want it. So the phone, I just made a cube, make it like sort of like a rectangle. Use the edge tool, select the edge at the back of the phone, and just rise it up. So I made a slope. And as you can see right now, I'm making the lamp. I'm just deselecting many of the faces. I deleted the face in the bottom to make some room for light to escape. And there you have it. That's how I made it. I just put a light inside the lamp And then I used the node editor again to change the texture of the lamp. So I made it slightly transparent so that the light can escape, and so it actually looks like a lamp. And then yeah, so the phone, after I made the slope, I just subdivided and made some cuts in the top face of the phone, and then I just extruded from that and made some individual rectangles and squares, just like the how I made the keyboard. Oh, and I forgot to mention the carpet. Okay, so the carpet is based on a fluffy carpet tutorial on YouTube that I found. It's fairly easy since it's like already preset by Blender. In Blender, it's already in the app and everything, you know. So the carpet is basically a plane, just a simple plane. I just press Shift A in the 3D viewport, and then add a shape, and I just add a plane. Stretch it out to make it look like a rectangle, and then there's this option to add particles, and I just use that option, but instead of adding like normal particles, I added hair. And then I just increased the number of hair, changed and modified the shape of the hair, so it actually looks like realistic and fluffy. And then I just use the node editor to make the each hair like a gradient, so it actually looks realistic, dark in the bottom and a bit lighter on top. So it looks like fur, you know. It looks thinner at the top. Okay, let's move on to the dining area and the dining table, whatever. So the table is made out of just a simple cylinder that I pressed down. I selected the top face and just made it smaller, and then I scale it out. And then I just the bottom part of the table, the base of the table, is made out of cubes that I stretched to make giant 3D rectangles, and then I just duplicated them and flipped them over, so it looks like it's an actual shape and base for the table. And then for the chairs, I started with the cube, and then I built out of that. So I just stretched it out, you know, subdivide the top face, and then I lifted it up so it actually looks like a cushion. And then yeah, and then I there's also this useful tool. It's called a modifier in Blender. You can use it for every object. So I use the bevel modifier for the chairs, so it actually looks like pretty round, and I also use it for the cushion, and for the sofa. And then right now you can see me making the lamp. I made it out of a simple circle. I put it on the ceiling, and then I extrude from that and kept on going. Yeah, so I made the main part of the lamp slightly transparent, so like the lamp by the bed, by the sofa, light can also go through the material. Yeah, it's fairly easy. Right now you can see me copying the light bulb. And yeah, there you have it. So this is after the render. This is one of the images after the render. I put I gave some color to the walls. I made like a base sort of on each of the wall. And then yeah, that's how you make a scene in Blender. Once you get used to it, it's fairly easy. If you know what you want to make, it's fairly easy. I suggest anyone go try it. Blender's completely free. It's available for both Mac users and for Windows users. And yeah, I just love it because it's very versatile. You know, I even like making all the textures. It's fairly easy with the node editor because the Blender was actually, it's open source. It's made by modelers and animators for modelers and animators. So it's made by the people for the people, and that's why I love it. So they made everything easier, much easier to use. And yeah, Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Hope you enjoy what I made. I'll continue making this out of like in my spare time, obviously. I love modeling. Animating is kind of tiring, especially because the render, which means like how much time it took to what do you call it? Okay, so basically rendering is a step where the computer calculates everything. So it calculates the lighting, the textures, how the textures are gonna affect the lighting, how the lighting is gonna affect the textures, how the objects are gonna affect each other, and everything like that. You know, to move around the camera in the first scene I showed you with the tour of the scene, I had to add a lot of keyframes, which means I had to increase the number of frames, and I ended up with 275 frames, and each frame took 2 to 4 minutes to render. So I had to render it overnight, just because it took so long. And yeah, I would like to thank the Blender Guru. He's a very talented YouTuber. He's really good at making tutorials for Blender. He got me started in Blender. He taught me how to model. Go check him out. His videos are really cool. And I'll like to thank Pixel Pit too for giving me the inspiration and the motivation to start 3D animation, because his animations are really cool. I love it. And also the Blender Stack Exchange, which is a forum sort of like Reddit, where people exchange questions and other people answer, and it really helped me since I was very unfamiliar with Blender. I didn't even know how to move the camera when I first started, but because of that, because of the Blender Stack Exchange and all the various YouTubers and videos I've watched, I was able to succeed. So yeah, thank you once again, and goodbye.